Okay, so what I have is little weathered wood, and that's what I'm starting with. Okay, so the white swan's going to be on the top of this piece, and then the weathered wood, which I've started to apply. Whoop! The weathered wood is going to be down here. Let's scooch this back. That's easier. Okay, so I'm going to do the weathered wood, and I'm going to kind of do a little, I don't know, maybe fade up into the white swan. So it's what I did on a different piece, only I did it just on the legs. This time we're going to do it, I'm going to do it on this dresser. Right now I got the weathered wood, and I'm just putting that on and kind of brushing it up. Kind of brushing it up into my piece. So I get these nice little kind of brush strokes in there. So the thing about the DIY paint is you'll see how dark it is when I put it on. But it's a clay-based paint, so it's going to dry. You can't see what I'm doing. Let's try that. Okay. So it's going to dry a little bit lighter than what it's going on as now, okay? You can maybe kind of see it's starting to dry like, oh, you can't see that either. Starting to dry like right in here. You can see that. So it gets a little bit lighter as it dries. Okay, so I'm gonna show you how I blend. Everybody blends differently. There isn't a right or a wrong. There's different ways to blend. There's different looks. So this is just the way I do it. You might not like it. That's okay. Lots of other people do it differently. This is just kind of the way I do it. So I have my water bottle, and this is a mister. So it just, instead of going with a ton of water, it just kind of mists. So I give that a little mist just to reactivate that paint. That's the nice thing about the DIY paint, is you can just hit it with a little bit of water and it kind of reactivates. And then I have my little paint pixie brush, and I kind of like to go on the side. You can go both ways. I kind of like to go this way. I don't know why. I just do. And so what's happening is I'm pulling up, because I reactivated that paint that was there and got it wet again. I can pull that color, and I kind of go from down and go up, and I can kind of pull that color from down here, and I can pull it up. And then I can even take my finger, I can wet my finger a little bit, sometimes I just wet it, and then I can blur that line even just a little bit more, and I can kind of, with my finger, manipulate that paint. Kind of brush that back out. So I get this kind of, I don't know, kind of cool, interesting, organic kind of look going on. And so I'll pull you back out a little bit. So that's what I've done along the whole bottom there of that. So obviously this is still wet, right? So this, because I had just sprayed it with water. So once it dries, it'll kind of look a little bit more like over here. And I can even take a little bit, if I want to, take a little bit of that weathered wood color and put it back in. I can put a little bit of that weathered wood color back into my, if I want to soften that line just a little bit more, I can put a little bit of, there's nothing on there, but I can even dry brush over that a little bit and just kind of soften that back out. You probably need more. There's nothing on here. There's like no paint on there, but and that's it. So that's my little, so water. Water is the trick to this whole thing. I think the next thing that I'll show you guys is what I'm going to do with the drawers, because I'm going to do something kind of cool with that. And I'm going to use a roller. I have a decorative roller. This is the Primrose pattern roller, and I got this from Artistic Painting Studio, which is Jennifer Ferguson. She is in the Paint Brand and Products group, so if you're interested in her decorative rollers, they are absolutely fantastic, and I use them for all sorts of looks. So I think what I want to do up here on the drawers is kind of have this sort of faded wallpaper kind of look to it. So let me get my supplies and come back to this. So you can kind of see why it's important to have the drawers in when you're doing this kind of look, because you want it all to read cohesive. Like if I had taken the drawers out and done each drawer individually, then it may not, when I put all the drawers back in, be cohesive, if that makes any sense. So I'm going to kind of do sort of a color wash kind of thing going on here. I'm going to do, so I'm wetting, I have my little Paint Pixie brush, and I'm just dipping it in some water. I'm just getting the tip of that wet. And I'm taking a little tiny bit of my weathered wood, so a little tiny bit on the edge, and let's bring it over here. So where I have this detail here, I'm just going to add a little bit of that. And I'm going to go up underneath here. I'm going all the way across there. Now, that looks a little bit dark, so I'm just going to, what I do is I stick my brush back in the water there, and I just take my water and I can soften that back out. And wipe it on my pants, yep. And then I'm going to take my wet brush again, and I'm going to add just a little tiny bit of the gravel road, just a little tiny bit on there. I'm going to add that in. And then you can take a cloth and you can wipe some of that back out. And you can play with it. I'm also distressing as I'm doing this because I didn't really let my white swan fully dry. So I'm pulling a little bit of that off, and that's okay. That's okay for me. If you didn't want any kind of distressing and you don't want to pull the paint off, you want to make sure that your base coat of paint is totally dry before you do this. But it's just kind of giving it a color wash. I'm debating on how I want to do this next part here. That is a little bit more of my watered down gravel road. Let's do, so I got a little bit more, so I wet my brush and I got a little bit of that weathered wood. And I think I'll do this here. And if it's too heavy and it's too much, just re-wet your brush and you can kind of spread that out. add a little bit, wet my brush, a little bit more of my gravel road. And I'm just kind of alternating between those two colors. So this brush is actually probably just a little bit, it's probably a little bit too small for what I want to do. So alternatively, I can take my spray bottle and I can mist my piece itself. And then I can take some paint. I'm going to do some gravel road on here. And because I have water on my piece, it's allowing me to spread that paint out. Go a little bit heavier, I think, with my paint there. My brush is still wet. The piece is still a little bit wet, so I can manipulate that. I'm going to add a little bit of that darker weathered wood down here. Work that in. And I'm just alternating between the two colors, between my weatherwood and my gravel road, keeping things wet, keeping my brush wet. And what I'm doing is I'm able to create lots of shadowing. Get shadowing along the edges of the drawer there. And this to me is the fun part, because this is like, I don't know, this is when you can make it your own. So what I'm going to do is add a little bit more here. And hopefully that is wet enough that if I run my roller through it, let's see what happens. Very subtle. So it's just a hint. Maybe not even can see that. I have just this little hint of pattern that I can see right here. If that's not enough and you want more of that pattern to come through, just do a heavier wash. And while that paint is really wet, my paint's probably dry, and I have a fan on me too, you can keep it wetter, do a little bit of a heavier color wash, and then roll the roller through. So let's see what the rest of it looks like. Let's see what happens when I get to these two drawers here. I may have to redo that. I may have to redo that drawer, but let's see what happens. It might be all right. I'm just going through and cleaning up a couple things. You can't see it, can you? Yeah, so I'm just going through and I'm cleaning up. I had a little bit of color, the gravel road and the weathered wood that was kind of sitting there on that edge, and I just wanted to clean that up a little bit. So a little bit of a wet brush. We'll spread that color back out and we'll kind of clean that up just a little bit. So let's try the next one and let's see what happens here. I'll pull you out just a little bit more. You can really see it. There. So again, I got my brush, I got some water. I have a little bit of my darker, which is my weathered wood. A little bit of water, pull some of that back out, and allow me to spread it. Just added a little bit more of the paint, a little bit more of that weathered wood on this side here. And then I'm going to add some of that gravel road, which is my color gray. Missed my piece a little bit. See what happens if I miss the whole thing. Let's run our roller through that. There. So that is, I had a little bit heavier of a wash and I misted it and then ran my roller through it, and it gives me a much more defined pattern. So I might have to redo that one just so that they match a little bit. I don't know, we'll see what happens. So that's what you don't want to do. Do you see how my roller got caught and I dragged it? That's what you don't want to do. The nice thing about the roller is you can brush that out and then go back over it. So I did get some of the roller down here, which I can either leave it or I can brush back over that. I think I'll probably end up brushing back over that just a little bit. I have just a little bit of that weathered wood still on here. So I'm just going to do the same thing on the last remaining side. The first thing that I'm going to do is mist to get that paint reactivated, just like we did before. And I use my little Paint Pixie blending brush to kind of bring some of that weathered wood color up into my white swan. And then I'm going to take my finger, get my finger wet, kind of move things around a little bit more. think that's okay. I'm gonna, you know, we'll judge the rest of this anyway, so I think that's okay. So I'm gonna take my little paint pixie brush here and my cup of water, and it's dirty water at this point because I've used it for all the other two sides. So, but it's okay, doesn't matter. And I'm gonna do a little bit of my weathered wood. This is my super dark gray. Get a little bit of that. And I'm going to take a little bit of my gravel road. If you feel like you have too much, like this is really dark over here, I just take my water and my brush and I just take some of that back off. I'm just wiping it on a cloth. My other side is fairly white. I might have to take a little bit of that off, just so that my two sides match a little bit better. And don't worry about if your sides don't match or if your front doesn't match. I mean, the whole point is that this is an organic process, and if it doesn't match, it doesn't match. And there goes my dresser. So on the other piece that I did, I had much smaller areas to work with. It was a vanity that had skinny legs, tiny little drawers. It didn't have big expanses of area like this. So the overall look is a little bit different on here. And on the vanity, I did the roller treatment just on the top. On this one, I just wanted to try it and see what it would look like as an all over. There. I think that's pretty good. So I'm gonna let this all dry. If I have some drips down here, I can just like I did in the front, I can take my little bit of my weathered wood and kind of feather that back in and clean some of that up so I don't have so many drips. But I think I kind of like it, so I'm gonna leave it and let it all dry, and then see what it looks like once it is totally dry. I've already taken the drawers out and cleaned those up, so I just took the drawers out, cleaned up all along my edges, and I'm gonna do this color wash. I don't think I'm gonna use the roller on the rest of the piece. I think I'm gonna leave the top of the piece plain, and just do kind of the color wash to take that white swan and make it a little bit grayer. And then we'll be able to add the waxes, and then we're done. So I finished the whole piece out in some clear wax, some DIY clear wax. One of the nice things that I like about the DIY wax is that it's really super soft, so it's really easy to work with. And then you just apply it in a thin coat. I didn't have any clean wax brushes, so I just used like a little round like auto sponge type thing to apply it, just because normally I would use a brush, but you can apply it with a rag or a cloth, anything that's lint free. And then I did decide to add just a little tiny bit of DIY black wax. So I have my DIY black wax, and I have a little tiny brush, and I'm going to put just like, where are you? There's like a little teeny tiny bit of black wax on there, and I'm just going to kind of scrub it in to some certain areas, like scrub it in here on some detail. And it's not going to make a huge impact, and I don't want it to make a huge impact. I just want a little bit, and then I'm taking just a lint-free cloth. I'm kind of working that in a little bit. Because I have clear wax on first, I can kind of manipulate that black wax a little bit. So it's a tiny, tiny, tiny little bit. It really, you might not even see on camera what a difference it makes. You may not even be able to see with the naked eye what a difference it makes, but it just adds that slight little bit of layered dimension and a little bit more interest. I'll pull you over here. And we'll do this guy, we'll do this drawer. It's like a good place to do this would be like kind of underneath my handles. I'm going to take my cloth and just wipe it gently back and kind of massage and kind of feather that in a little bit. There. And again, super subtle. but just takes your painting up from like, hey, I can put paint on a piece, to, oh, I have some artistry behind it. So that's it, and I am done. I'll pull you back so you can see it. There we have it. It's finished. I put new glass knobs that I got at Menards. They're actually not glass, they're just acrylic. But I think they complement the piece well, and I'm going to go ahead and get my pictures, and we are done. And this paint dries fast, this whole system is fast. I got this whole entire thing, I started it yesterday, like late in the afternoon, and worked on it for a couple hours yesterday, worked on it for a couple hours today, and I'm done. If I had a big chunk of change, a chunk of time, I could have gotten it all done, but A, I'm slow, and B, I have kids, so you know how that goes. That's it, we're finished. Any questions? Please, please, please let me know. Happy to answer. Bye.